In February of 1959, 9 experienced hikers disappeared in the frozen mountains of the Soviet Union. Weeks later, rescuers discovered their tent abandoned on the snowy slopes of a place known as Dyatlov Pass. But what terrified investigators most was not the disappearance itself. It was the condition in which the camp had been left behind. The tent had been ripped open from the inside, and somehow, in the middle of a deadly snowstorm, the hikers had fled into the darkness barefoot. The group consisted of young, experienced hikers and skiers, most of them students who understood the dangers of winter expeditions better than ordinary people. They were not reckless tourists wandering blindly into the mountains. These were trained adventurers who had spent years surviving harsh conditions across the Soviet wilderness. Their leader was Igor Dyatlov, a confident and respected hiking instructor whose experience gave the others reassurance as they prepared for the difficult expedition ahead. The journey was meant to test endurance and skill against some of the harshest winter terrain imaginable. Snowstorms, violent winds, freezing temperatures capable of killing a person within hours. But despite the danger, the mood among the group reportedly remained optimistic. Photographs recovered later would show them smiling beside snow-covered forests, joking together, and continuing deeper into the mountains, as if nothing unusual waited ahead. Yet none of them knew that this journey would eventually become one of the greatest mysteries in modern history. By early February, the hikers had reached the eastern slopes of a mountain known by locals as Kolotshechel. Translated roughly from the local Mansi language, its meaning was unsettling. Mountain of the Dead. That evening, heavy snow and worsening visibility reportedly forced the group to stop and establish camp directly on the exposed mountainside, rather than descending toward safer, forested ground below. It was a decision. It was a decision that seemed logical at the time. Experienced hikers often camped on open slopes to avoid the dangers of avalanches and difficult terrain hidden beneath snow-covered forests. The group pitched their tent against the frozen slope and settled in for the night as powerful winds swept across the mountain. Temperatures reportedly dropped far below freezing. Outside the tent, darkness consumed the entire mountainside. No villages, no lights, no rescue nearby, just endless snow and silence stretching into the frozen wilderness. And sometime during that night, something went terribly wrong. Weeks later, after the hikers failed to return, rescue teams finally located their campsite buried beneath layers of snow. What they discovered immediately disturbed investigators. The tent was still standing partially against the mountain. Food remained inside. Personal belongings had been left behind. Shoes, jackets, supplies. Everything suggested the group had fled suddenly and in complete panic. Then investigators noticed something even stranger. The tent had been sliced open from the inside. Whatever frightened the hikers that night had apparently become so urgent, they chose to cut their way out, into the freezing darkness instead of using the normal entrance only a few feet away. Footprints leading away from the camp were later discovered pressed into the snow. Bare feet, socks, some shoes. The tracks showed the group moving away from the tent together toward the forest below. But the deeper investigators looked into the mystery, the stranger everything became. The first bodies were eventually discovered beneath a large cedar tree near the edge of the forest. 2 hikers had apparently attempted to start a fire before freezing to death in the brutal cold. Nearby branches above them were broken high up the tree, suggesting one or both may have climbed desperately into the darkness, searching for the abandoned campsite uphill. But the remaining bodies were found, scattered across the snow-covered landscape in deeply unsettling positions. Some appeared to have been trying to return toward the tent before collapsing. Others were discovered months later beneath thick snow further inside a ravine. And several of those hikers had suffered disturbing injuries, broken ribs, severe chest trauma, fractures powerful enough to resemble the impact of a car crash. Yet strangely, many showed little external damage on the surface of their skin. One victim was reportedly missing her tongue. Another had severe skull injuries. The deeper investigators looked into the deaths. the less sense the entire incident seemed to make. Over the decades, countless theories have attempted to explain what happened that night on Dyatlov Pass. Some believe an avalanche may have terrified the hikers into fleeing the tent suddenly. Others argue the evidence does not fully support that explanation. There were theories involving military experiments, secret weapons testing, violent winds, hypothermia-induced panic, or even strange atmospheric phenomena capable of creating terrifying sounds across the mountains. Some witnesses later reported mysterious orange lights appearing in the sky near the region during that same period. And because so many details remained unexplained, the mystery slowly evolved into legend. But perhaps the most frightening possibility is also the simplest. That somewhere in the freezing darkness of those mountains, 9 experienced hikers became overwhelmed by fear powerful enough to send them running barefoot into a deadly snowstorm. Today, more than 60 years later, the Dyatlov Pass incident continues haunting people around the world, not simply because of the deaths themselves, but because of the unanswered silence surrounding them. The frozen mountains still stand where the hikers made their final camp. Winds still move across the snow-covered slopes, and somewhere within that endless wilderness, the truth of what happened that night may have disappeared forever. Because sometimes, the mysteries that disturb us most are not the ones involving monsters, but the ones reminding us how small and vulnerable human beings truly are. Against the unknown,